My family abandoned me at 6 for my sick sister. My uncle raised me, and now I'm legally his son. But when she died 14 years later, they came back begging. I told them I didn't know them, and they never saw coming what happened next. I'm 22 years old, studying civil engineering at State University, and I need to tell this story because what happened a few weeks ago at church basically forced me to face something I'd been avoiding for years. I guess I should start at the beginning. When I was 6 years old and my parents left me at my grandparents' house on a Tuesday afternoon, I don't remember much about that specific day, to be honest. But I do remember my mom, Nancy, telling me it would only be for a while, that my sister Amelia was very sick and they needed to focus on taking care of her, and that I'd be coming home soon. I remember nodding because at 6 years old you don't really understand what a while means, you know? I thought maybe it would be a week or two, like when you stay at your grandparents' house in the summer. My sister Amelia was like 4 years old at that time and had been born with health problems, a heart or lung stuff. They never really explained to me what it was, exactly because I was in little. What I did know is that she spent a lot of time in the hospital and that my parents, Gregory and Nancy, were always stressed and tired. Before they left me with my grandparents, I'd already noticed they were paying less attention to me, like I'd come home from kindergarten and nobody would ask how my day went, or my drawings would stay on the table without anyone looking at them, because they were always on the phone with doctors or running to the hospital. But, well, she was my little sister and she was sick, so I thought it was normal, you know? The first few days at my grandparents' house, Violet and Raymond's, were weird but not terrible. My grandma cooked good food. My grandpa let me watch TV longer than allowed, and I kept waiting for my parents to come get me at any moment. A week passed, then 2, then a month. I asked constantly, "When are Mom and Dad coming?" And my grandma always said the same thing. "Soon, sweetheart. Soon." But they never came. They called on the phone. Sometimes, super short conversations where I'd tell them things about school and they'd say, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, that's great, son," but you could tell they weren't really listening. It was my Uncle Philip, my dad's younger brother, who finally told me the truth. I was like 6.5 by then. Several months had passed, and he came to visit me at my grandparents' house. He took me for a walk to the park and said, "Nathan, your parents aren't coming for you. They're going to stay taking care of Amelia, and you're going to stay here with Grandma and Grandpa." I remember I stayed quiet for a long while, watching the other kids playing on the swings, and then I asked him, "For how long?" And he looked at me with a face I'll never forget, like sad but also angry, and he said, "I don't know, Nathan. I wish I could tell you something different." I think that was the moment when I really understood that I'd been abandoned, even though I didn't have the words to express it like that back then. My grandparents were good people, really, but they were already older, like in their 60s, and raising a 6-year-old kid was too much for them. My grandpa Raymond had knee problems, and my grandma Violet got tired easily. They did their best, but you could tell they were overwhelmed. I was well behaved, tried not to cause problems, but I was still a kid, you know? I needed attention, help with homework, someone to go to school meetings. Philip and his wife Julia started coming more often, to help with things, to take me to the doctor when I got sick, to go to my school events when my grandparents couldn't. When I was like 7, almost 8, Philip and Julia told me I was going to go live with them. My grandma cried that day. But it was a weird crying, like relieved but also guilty, as if she knew it was for the best, but felt bad for not being able to do it herself. Julia hugged me and said, "You're going to have your own room, Nathan. We're going to paint it whatever color you want." I chose blue, navy blue, because I liked boats back then. They lived in a bigger house, in a better neighborhood, and from day one they treated me like I was their son, not like an obligation or a burden. Julia couldn't have children. I found out about that years later, but at that moment I didn't know anything about that. I just knew that she made me breakfast every morning, asked me how school went and actually listened to my answers, helped me with homework, read to me before bed. Philip taught me to ride a bike, to play baseball, took me fishing on Saturdays. Basically, they gave me everything that normal parents give their child, and I started to forget that technically they weren't my real parents. I think I was like 8 years old, maybe 9, when I started calling them Mom and Dad without realizing it. One day it just came out. I was playing outside and I fell and scraped my knee and I ran inside yelling, "Mom!" and Julia came running and patched me up, and only afterwards did I realize what I'd said. I stayed quiet, thinking maybe she'd be upset or something, but she just smiled and kissed my forehead and kept patching me up like nothing happened. Philip, too. I started calling him Dad, and he never corrected me, never made it a thing, just accepted it. My biological parents, Gregory and Nancy, still existed in theory. They came to visit me like 2 or 3 times a year, always awkward and forced visits where I didn't know what to say to them, and they didn't know what to say to me either. They'd arrive with expensive gifts, like compensating for their absence with toys I didn't even want, and they'd ask me generic things like they were talking to an acquaintance's son, not their own son. How's school? Good. Do you have friends? Yes. Do you like living here? Yes. 5-minute conversations that felt like hours. The worst part was when they brought Amelia, who was still sick, but stable. I felt like I should have some connection with her. She was my sister after all, but basically we were 2 strangers. She was always tired, pale, connected to who knows how many machines and medications, and my parents treated her like she was made of glass, like she was going to break at any moment. And I understood them. I mean, she was sick. I got it. But at the same time I wondered, what about me? Didn't I matter? Couldn't they divide their time even a little bit? When I was like 11, I decided I wasn't going to try anymore with them. There was one particularly horrible visit where they arrived late, stayed like half an hour, and my biological mom, Nancy, literally spent the entire time talking on the phone with Amelia's doctor, while my dad, Gregory, looked at his cell phone. They didn't even pay real attention to me. When they left, Julia found me crying in my room and hugged me and told me it was okay to be angry, that my feelings were valid. After that, I stopped calling them, stopped asking Julia to send them pictures of me, stopped waiting for their visits. And honestly, it was liberating, like taking a weight off my shoulders. Philip and Julia never spoke badly about my biological parents in front of me, which I appreciate to this day. But they didn't defend them either, or force me to maintain contact. They let me process things at my own pace, which was exactly what I needed. When I turned 14, we were having dinner, the 3 of us, and out of nowhere Philip said, "Nathan, Julia and I have been talking about something." I got a little scared because I thought it was going to be something bad, but he continued, "We'd like to officially adopt you if you want, legally be your mom and dad. You don't have to decide now, think about it." Honestly, I didn't have to think about it much. I told them yes basically immediately. They explained to me that there was a legal process, that they needed authorization from my biological parents, that it could take time. And it did take time. Years, actually. My biological parents at first resisted, not because they really wanted me in their lives, but because I guess officially giving up your child is admitting you failed as a parent, you know? But they finally accepted, signed the papers, and when I turned 18, the adoption became official. It was weird signing those papers, honestly, because I legally changed my last name and everything. I stopped being Nathan Gregory's last name and became Nathan Phillips' last name. It was like closing a chapter and starting a new one, although really for me that chapter had ended years ago. Julia cried during the entire ceremony at the courthouse. Happy tears, obviously, and Philip wouldn't stop smiling. My grandparents, Violet and Raymond, were there too, proud and excited. My biological parents didn't show up, which didn't surprise me or hurt as much as I would have thought. I started university that same year, civil engineering at the state school, like 2 hours away from home. Philip and Julia helped me with everything, bought me things for the dorm, took me the first day, called me every week to see how I was. They are, the best parents anyone could ask for. And I was happy. I'd found my place in the world. I had a family that really loved me. Then, when I was 20, almost 21, Amelia died. She was like 19 or 20. I'm not exactly sure. Her health had gradually worsened over the years, and finally her body just couldn't take it anymore. Julia called to tell me, asked me if I wanted to go to the funeral. Honestly, I hesitated a lot. I felt almost nothing for Amelia, which sounds horrible, but it's the truth. I didn't really know her. We hadn't grown up together. We didn't have shared memories. She was basically a stranger who shared my blood. I decided to go to the funeral because Philip told me it might help me close things, find peace or whatever. The three of us went together, Philip, Julia, and me. The funeral was in a big church, full of people, like all the neighbors and family friends and I don't know who else. I saw Gregory and Nancy from afar, obviously devastated, hugging each other and crying. They looked old, tired, worn out. Part of me felt sorry for them. I'm not going to lie. But another part, the bigger part, was still angry. I was still that 6-year-old kid wondering why I wasn't enough, why they didn't love me too. I didn't approach them during the funeral. I stayed back with Philip and Julia, listened to the priest's words, looked at the white coffin, and left. I didn't know what to feel, like I was sad about Amelia in the abstract. It was a young life that ended, but it wasn't a personal grief, you know? I didn't cry. I didn't feel like I had the right to cry for someone I basically didn't know. A few months passed and I went back to my normal routine. Classes, homework, hanging out with friends, calling Philip and Julia on Sundays. And then December came, Christmas time, and Julia suggested we go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve, something we did every year since I was little. We went to the same church we always went to, the one in our neighborhood, and sat in our usual seats. The mass was ending, like it was almost 1 a.m, and people were starting to leave when suddenly someone touched my shoulder. I turned around, and there were Gregory and Nancy, standing right behind me. My first instinct was to freeze, like my brain wasn't processing what they were doing there, in our church, at our mass. Nancy had teary eyes and Gregory looked nervous, uncomfortable. They said, "Nathan, can we talk to you for a moment?" And I looked at them like they were two complete strangers. Philip stood up immediately, protective, and told them something like, "Maybe this isn't the best time," and Julia took my hand. But Gregory insisted, "Just 5 minutes, please. We need to talk to our son." And that's where something in me broke, or rather closed completely. I looked them straight in the eyes and said, "Excuse me, I think. You're confusing me with someone else. I don't know you." And I turned around and left the church with Philip and Julia. I know it sounds cruel, and maybe it was, but in that moment, I felt it was the only thing I could do. They'd spent 14 years not being my parents, 14 years where Philip and Julia had done all the work, had been there for every important moment, had raised me and loved me unconditionally. And now that Amelia had died, they came looking for me? Like I was a consolation prize? Like they could fill the void she left with the son they abandoned? No. Just no. We got home and I was shaking, like adrenaline at full blast, and Philip made me tea and we sat in the living room and talked for hours. He told me I'd done what felt right, that nobody could judge me for that he understood. Julia hugged me and told me it was my decision, that they'd support me no matter what. And I thanked them for that, for always giving me the space to feel what I needed to feel, without pressuring me. But Gregory and Nancy didn't give up there. They started sending me letters, like physical letters to the university dorm. I don't know how they got the address. The first 2 or 3 I threw away without opening, but then curiosity got the better of me and I opened one. It was from Nancy, handwritten, like 5 pages, where she basically told me about her entire life after they left me with my grandparents. How they'd dedicated every second to taking care of Amelia, how they'd sacrificed everything, their relationship, their jobs, their mental health, everything, to keep her alive. How now that she had died, they'd realized they'd lost their other child in the process, and they wanted a chance to fix things. I read the entire letter, set it aside, and didn't know what to feel. Part of me understood their position. I mean, Amelia was sick. It was an impossible situation, and they made the decision to prioritize her. I understood it rationally. But emotionally, I still hurt. I still wondered why they couldn't find a balance, why they left me completely aside instead of trying to maintain at least a little connection with me. I received like 4 more letters in the following weeks. Gregory also wrote one, shorter, more direct, basically saying he regretted everything, that he'd been a bad father, that he wanted to get to know me again, that please give him a chance. And I read them all, but didn't respond to any. I didn't know what to say, honestly. What are you supposed to say to the parents who abandoned you 14 years ago and now want to come back? I talked to Philip and Julia about it, obviously. They told me they'd understand if I wanted to give Gregory and Nancy a chance, that they wouldn't feel betrayed or threatened by that, which I thought was incredible of them. Like most adoptive parents would feel insecure in that situation, but they just wanted what was best for me. But I told them no, that I wasn't ready, that maybe I'd never be ready. Finally, after the 6th or 7th letter, I decided to respond. I wrote them like 2 pages. Nothing emotional or dramatic, just honest. I told them I appreciated that they finally acknowledged what they'd done, that I understood the situation with Amelia had been difficult, but that didn't erase the damage they'd caused me. I told them Philip and Julia were my parents now, the only parents I recognized, and that I didn't need Gregory and Nancy in my life. I told them I wasn't ready to forgive them, that maybe someday I would be, but not now, and that please respect my decision and leave me alone. I sent the letter and felt weird afterwards, like relieved but also sad. It's complicated, you know? Because I don't hate them, honestly. I just don't feel anything for them. They're like 2 people I met a long time ago, who made decisions that changed my life forever, but who no longer have a place in my present. They haven't contacted me again since then. It's been like 2 months. I don't know if they respected my request, or if they just gave up. But for now, I'm at peace with that. I'm still studying, still calling Philip and Julia every Sunday, still visiting my grandparents Violet and Raymond whenever I can. I have a family that loves me, that was always there for me, and that's more than a lot of people have. Sometimes I wonder if Amelia knew she had a brother, if Gregory and Nancy ever told her about me. I wonder if she would have wanted to meet me, if we would have had anything in common. But those are questions I'll never be able to answer, and I guess that's okay. Life doesn't always give you closure, doesn't always give you the answers you want, but what I do know is that I don't owe Gregory and Nancy anything. I don't owe them forgiveness. I don't owe them a relationship. I don't owe them the opportunity to redeem themselves. Maybe someday, in a few years, when I'm more mature or wiser or whatever, I can find it in my heart to let them in. Even a little bit. But not now. And it's okay that it's like that. It took me a long time to learn that it's okay to set boundaries, that it's okay to protect your own peace of mind, that it's okay to say no to people who hurt you, even if they're your biological family. Philip told me something a few weeks ago that stuck with me. He said, "Nathan, family isn't just blood. It's who's there when things get tough, who chooses you every day, who loves you without conditions," and he's right. He and Julia chose me when they didn't have to, loved me when my own parents couldn't, gave me a home when I didn't have one. That's real family, and that's enough for me.